Emily Carter uncovered secrets that no one in Millbrook dared to face, and Daniel Monroe, the trusted deputy, would do anything to keep them hidden. What followed was a deadly game of betrayal, deception, and justice that shook the Heartland to its core. Millbrook was the kind of town where life moved at a slow, predictable pace. The streets were lined with small brick houses, and the scent of fresh bread from the local bakery mingled with the crisp morning air. Neighbors greeted each other with waves, and the diner on Main Street was always buzzing with familiar faces sharing the latest news over coffee. Everyone assumed they knew their town and everyone in it, but that illusion of safety was about to shatter. It was a foggy November morning when the peace of Millbrook was broken. Emily Carter, a young woman in her mid-20s, was found lying motionless near the old train tracks on the outskirts of town. The scene was chillingly quiet, with only the distant hum of the wind and the faint whistle of a passing train in the distance. Emily had been well known in Millbrook. She volunteered at the local library, tutored children after school, and always had a kind word for anyone she met. Her death sent shockwaves through the community. The sheriff's office arrived quickly, cordoning off the area and beginning a careful search for clues. Despite their thorough investigation, the scene offered very little. There were no obvious signs of a struggle, no weapon nearby, nothing that could immediately explain how a vibrant young woman ended up dead in such a remote location. The only item that stood out was a small hand-carved wooden charm lying near her, delicate and out of place, like a silent message left behind. Whispers spread quickly through Millbrook. People speculated about what could have happened, and suspicion began to creep into the town's conversations. Some wondered if Emily had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Others feared someone in their midst could be responsible. The sheriff and his team started digging into Emily's life, discovering strange patterns in her recent behavior. She had been taking late-night walks alone, making phone calls to unknown numbers, and leaving cryptic notes in her journal. Each revelation added another layer to the mystery, suggesting that Emily's death was not a random tragedy but the result of something far more deliberate. The town, which once felt safe and familiar, now seemed filled with shadows. Every neighbor, every familiar face could be hiding secrets. As investigators pieced together the fragments of Emily's last days, it became clear that beneath Millbrook's quiet surface, danger had been growing unnoticed. The search for answers had just begun, and the first threads of a dark and complicated story were starting to unravel. Investigators quickly realized that Emily Carter had not been living an ordinary life before her death. Her journal, filled with neat handwriting and careful observations, revealed a side of her that few in Millbrook had known. She had been investigating something dangerous, something hidden beneath the town's familiar streets. Page after page detailed suspicious activities, strange shipments at local businesses, odd financial transactions, and meetings with people who did not belong in Millbrook. Emily's curiosity had led her to uncover a web of criminal activity, and it seemed that her discoveries had put her directly in harm's way. The sheriff's team interviewed anyone who had been in contact with Emily over the last few weeks. A bartender recalled men who visited late at night, speaking in hushed tones, glancing over their shoulders as if expecting someone to be watching. A delivery driver admitted he had noticed shipments that never matched the records, packages that seemed to appear out of nowhere and disappear just as quickly. Each piece of testimony painted a picture of a town hiding secrets, a town that was not as peaceful as it appeared. The more investigators dug, the more dangerous the situation seemed. Emily had kept meticulous notes on people who were supposed to be trustworthy local shop owners, employees at the train station, even members of the town council. Patterns began to emerge, showing a network of individuals who had something to hide. Emily had connected the dots in ways that were subtle but undeniable, and it was becoming clear that someone had noticed her probing into their lives. Evidence suggested that Emily had confronted these people quietly, gathering information without drawing attention to herself. Her careful approach, however, had not been enough to protect her. The small wooden charm found at the scene began to take on new significance. Investigators realized it might have been a warning, a message left intentionally for her, or a mark left by the person who followed her that night. Millbrook's residents were shocked to learn that beneath the surface of their ordinary town, danger had been quietly growing. Trust became a fragile concept, and suspicion filled conversations that had once been casual. As the police pieced together the web Emily had uncovered, it became evident that her death was not random. It was the result of a chain of secrets, lies, and illicit dealings that someone was determined to keep hidden. What had started as a quiet, peaceful town had turned into a place of fear, and the investigation was only beginning to uncover how deep the darkness ran. Weeks of investigation seemed to lead nowhere. The sheriff's team followed every lead, questioned every witness, and analyzed every piece of evidence. Yet the puzzle of Emily Carter's death remained frustratingly incomplete. The town's unease deepened as rumors spread, each theory darker than the last. Then, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source: surveillance footage from a gas station near the edge of town. At first glance, it appeared ordinary, just a few cars and a lone pedestrian. But upon closer inspection, one figure stood out. The footage showed Daniel Monroe, a deputy with the sheriff's office, walking near the train tracks late at night, around the time Emily disappeared. Monroe was a familiar face in Millbrook, known for his reliability and dedication. He had always been seen as someone who could be trusted without question, but now, he appeared at the center of a mystery that had consumed the entire town. The news sent shockwaves through the sheriff's office and the community. No one could reconcile the dependable deputy they knew with the possibility of involvement in a violent crime. When investigators confronted Monroe, his calm demeanor did little to ease their suspicions. He insisted he had been on routine patrol, following his normal duties. Yet inconsistencies in his story quickly emerged. Time-stamped records and witness accounts contradicted his version of events, and his explanation of his route that night did not align with the surveillance footage. The more investigators examined his actions, the more uneasy they became. Forensic evidence added another layer of doubt. Dirt collected from Monroe's boots matched the exact soil composition near the train tracks where Emily's body was found. Fibers discovered on his uniform were similar to those in the small wooden charm left at the scene. Each piece of evidence suggested that Monroe's presence was no coincidence. The town that once felt safe now grappled with a terrifying realization: someone in law enforcement, someone sworn to protect them, might be responsible. As the investigation unfolded, the idea of Monroe as a suspect created tension that reached every corner of Millbrook. Families who had trusted him for years began to question every interaction, every gesture, every decision he had made while on duty. What had once been a clear path to justice now became a labyrinth of suspicion and betrayal. Monroe's role in the town's dark undercurrents was only beginning to emerge, and the truth, once uncovered, promised to shake Millbrook to its core. The investigation into Daniel Monroe's involvement revealed a side of him that no one in Millbrook could have imagined. Beneath his calm exterior and reputation as a dependable deputy, Monroe harbored an obsession with control. He had spent years quietly manipulating events in the town, ensuring that certain businesses, shipments, and financial dealings went unnoticed. Emily Carter, with her curiosity and determination, had unknowingly uncovered evidence that threatened to expose everything he had built. Monroe's meticulous nature made him careful, but it also revealed a darker side when pressure mounted. Investigators discovered hidden files on his personal devices, financial records, photographs of suspicious activity, and notes linking local business owners to a series of crimes stretching back years. Emily's notes and journal entries had intersected with Monroe's records, showing that she had come closer than anyone else had to uncovering his schemes. Realizing the threat, Monroe had followed her, making sure she could not reveal what she had discovered. Further investigation exposed a network of accomplices who had silently supported Monroe. Business owners who depended on his protection, employees who had turned a blind eye, and even a few local officials had kept the town's secrets buried. Together, they had created an environment where corruption could thrive, hidden beneath Millbrook's ordinary facade. Emily's death was not just a crime of opportunity, it was calculated, deliberate, and intended to send a warning to anyone who might follow in her footsteps. The wooden charm found at the scene began to take on new significance. Investigators concluded that it was more than an incidental object. It was a symbol of Monroe's control, a personal mark that tied him directly to the crime. Every detail, from the placement of the body to the careful avoidance of obvious clues, pointed to his meticulous planning. It became clear that Monroe's obsession with power and secrecy had driven him to eliminate the one person who had threatened to unravel his carefully constructed web. Millbrook, once a town where everyone trusted one another, had become a place of hidden dangers. Friends, neighbors, and colleagues were forced to confront the possibility that betrayal could come from the most unlikely source. The discovery of Monroe's motive revealed the full scope of the danger Emily had faced. Her death was not an accident but a consequence of curiosity, bravery, and the pursuit of truth in a town unwilling to face its own shadows. The investigation now had a clear direction, bringing Monroe and his accomplices to justice and uncovering the depths of corruption that had lurked unseen in the heart of the community. The trial of Daniel Monroe and his accomplices became the most closely watched event in Millbrook's history. Courtrooms that had once been quiet and procedural were now filled with tension, reporters, and townspeople eager for answers. Every piece of evidence gathered during the investigation was presented: Emily Carter's journal, Monroe's hidden files, the surveillance footage, the wooden charm, and forensic reports linking him to the crime scene. The weight of the truth pressed down on the town, and for the first time, residents began to confront the full scale of the betrayal that had occurred in their midst. As the trial unfolded, details of Monroe's meticulous planning shocked everyone. The court heard how he had manipulated evidence, used his position to monitor Emily, and coordinated with accomplices to cover his tracks. The testimonies of business owners and former colleagues revealed a network of deceit that had silently operated for years, relying on the town's trust in law enforcement to remain hidden. It became clear that Emily's courage had brought these secrets into the light, and her death was a direct consequence of her determination to seek the truth. Monroe's demeanor in court contrasted sharply with the gravity of the accusations. He remained outwardly calm, but the mounting evidence left little room for denial. As the prosecution laid out the chain of events, the town watched, stunned, as the reality of the betrayal took shape. It was not just one act of violence, but a calculated effort to maintain control over a network of illegal activities, and Monroe had orchestrated it all from within the very office meant to protect Millbrook. When the verdict was finally delivered, it brought both relief and sorrow. Monroe and his accomplices were convicted, their plans dismantled by the relentless work of investigators and the courage of a young woman who had refused to stay silent. For Millbrook, the trial was a turning point. Families who had doubted themselves or each other began to heal, and a sense of justice, however painful, started to settle over the town. Though Emily Carter's life had been cut tragically short, her impact endured. Her bravery had exposed corruption, brought criminals to justice, and reminded the town of the importance of vigilance, courage, and truth. Millbrook slowly returned to a sense of normalcy, but the lessons of betrayal and bravery would linger. Emily's story became a symbol, a reminder that even in the quietest, most ordinary places, justice could prevail, and the heart of a community could endure even the darkest shadows.